Hey guys, so I want to share an experience with you that I had late last night as I was getting ready for bed. I'd done everything that I needed to do in this area of the house, and as I was gonna go plug in my phone, I realized that I had forgotten my charger here in this area. So I was like, oh, let me go get it. And so as I'm making my way down the hall to this area here, the open area, all of a sudden I look up and I'm approaching the living room. This is like an open concept space, it's like living room, kitchen, supposedly dining room. And so I'm approaching the living room and I look to my right and I see this beautiful diamond shaped jewel. And it was small though, it was like a pinpoint, it was like very small jewel, and it was like a orangey yellow. It almost looked like, not even like that, it was like really bright and and just beautiful, just like glowing. I'll see if I can find a picture of it and then post it right here. And so it was beautiful and glowing, and I saw it as I was walking because I was kind of looking down, and I looked up and I saw it, and as soon as I saw it, I blinked. Like what did I just see? So I blinked because automatically I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. But as I did that, I saw it again, and it flashed, and it was very 3D. It was very 3D. It wasn't hazy or anything. It was right there. It was probably like 20 steps away from me and to the right. So if you look at behind me, there's this area right here that's the living room and baby's play area. It was standing over there somewhere, and the hallway is over there. So it was standing somewhere over here as I was walking down the hallway coming this way. And so I got to see it before I stepped out into the main part. And so I saw it, right? And so I froze. Because one thing over the years that I have learned about my intuition, I mean, I've seen it and experienced it all. But one thing that I know about my intuition is that when I experience a certain energy, a certain frequency, trust it because it's real. The times in my past where I've dismissed it, and then all of a sudden it actually was, like there's evidence to prove that I did see what I saw, or I did experience what I experienced, So over the years I've learned like not to dismiss something like of a certain frequency because it is what it is, and it is happening. So it had that frequency, it had that tone, and so I stopped, I froze, and I was like looking in that area, right, because it disappeared, it wasn't there. But as I was looking in that area before reaching this open space, I could see that in that area where I had felt, or I had seen, the diamond shaped orange yellow jewel, there was like this web. It's like when you go to like Photoshop or something, or one of those programs, and you take a picture and then you fade it opaque, you make it opaque so it's like fades but you can still see it. It had that. So it wasn't like a spider web, it was just like a web that went from the ceiling to the floor. It was square shaped, and it was standing there, and I could see it like barely visible. But I have this innate ability to be able to see certain things, and so yeah, I was standing there looking at it, and it's what I call interdimensional. It immediately came to me like, this is an interdimensional being in my home right now, observing me. And so I took a few steps back to see if I could replicate the jewel that I had seen, that pinpoint of light, and and I couldn't. I mean, there was no lights that were on or anything. The living room was already dark. TV is on right now, playing some spiritual tones, but there were no lights in here. It was dark. I have a little night light. So there's nothing that could have reflected it. You know, I tried to debunk it in that way too, of course. You know, I'm never just like, oh, you know. I accept everything. No, I try to debunk, do my own research, and be open-minded, skeptical as person, kind of a balance, you know, there. But I know my intuition, and I know when I need to be listening and paying attention, and that was that moment. As I was, you know, seeing that, it obviously wanted me to see it. Because there are many times where you feel something and it's like you can't see anything, but it was here to be acknowledged. And so I stood there looking at that kind of web like or just transparent screen in that, and I'm not going to say that I wasn't feeling a little intimidated. I was, just a little bit of me was like feeling like, whoa. Okay. But for the most part, I felt so humbled. And I felt, what did I feel? I know that I felt humbled. And so my instinct was, I stood there for a minute, right, looking at it, and I decided I'm gonna walk past it to go around over this way to get my charger. And so as I started walking, all of a sudden I started speaking in my language of light that I haven't used in so long. And so I walked past it and I started doing that, and I nodded my head. I nodded my head at it, like I acknowledge that you are there, that you're observing me. I didn't feel threatened. I didn't feel scared. I felt this chill of, wow, this is happening, you know? So like I said, it was a little intimidating because of that, but the whole notion of that happening it made me feel so humbled. I hope that I'm making some kind of sense. And so I spoke in language of light, and I have to say, language of light is different for everybody that speaks language of light. We all have our different tonality with it. We all have our different, like, accents. It's like, you know, different languages in the world. There's different languages in the universe, in the cosmos, in the, you know, different dimensions. We have this beautiful language of light that's universal. And so yeah, mine came to me all of a sudden, and I started speaking the whole time I was walking through here, this area right here, coming this way, and went and grabbed my charger, and it was just flowing through me. And I found it so fascinating and validating because, like I said, I haven't used my language of light in so long. As a matter of fact, I started speaking in my language of light since I was a tween, I want to say. If not before that, maybe as a kid. I had, but I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know a lot of the things that had happened to me as a child. I didn't know they were different. I only started realizing that I was a bit different, and I saw the world and experienced the world and felt the world differently because of the things that I would experience being in a group of people or people that I was close to, and them not reacting to what I was seeing like I was reacting. Like sometimes it was just not horror, but sometimes it was fear, and other times it was like indignation or just confusion, for sure, because no one seemed to be experiencing what I was experiencing. And it was very puzzling. So I didn't know a lot of the things that I was experiencing to be kind of a selective few that experienced them to that degree without actually diving into meditation or things like that. And so I just thought, I thought it was really weird and not I came to that realization that I thought it was really weird and kind of abnormal, which I am. but but it wasn't until I went on my spiritual journey and I really started learning about my spiritual journey, what I was, when I was in my early 20s. And in my early 20s, I started learning about And so in my early 20s, I started learning about what it was, being an empath. I learned about that. I got online and started, like, you know how sometimes we get online and, like, put our symptoms in? I started putting my spiritual symptoms in because I was living in Oakland at the time, in this Victorian house that had a whole bunch of energy with college students on one side and Wiccans on the other. Serious Wiccans that practiced a lot of things that at the time I didn't understand at all, but whatever was going on over there was also spilling into where I lived. And I was getting my butt kicked in the spiritual sense because I was experiencing so much stuff and I had no idea what was going on. I just knew that I was, like, really bombarded with this. So I've had experiences all my life since I can recall one of my first experiences when I was, like, as young as kindergarten, because I remember something reoccurring constantly, like almost every night, and I couldn't, in what I thought was a dream, I couldn't read what this being was constantly sending me. And now that I think about it, I don't think it was English, it wasn't language, human language. It was something that was more of a spiritual, probably language of light. And so I've had a lot of experiences all my life. And so, yeah, I did my own research and I started, learning that I was an empath and stuff. But it wasn't until years later that I was already meditating, I was already experiencing things, I had already gotten possessed. Talk about that later, that's a whole other topic. I already experienced interdimensional beings and things like that I, and then I experienced a soulmate that opened me up to what love was and what connection was, and all these things, spiritual things. He's the one who introduced me to, he introduced me to Jack Fresco and the Venus Project, and he didn't know anything about it himself, but he had mentioned it because of a brother of his, and it sparked my curiosity, being who I am. And neither of us knew we were indigo children. He was a major indigo child, and there's so much there that I don't think he ever explored or understood, and I didn't until in comes my twin flame, and poof, everything just busted open. And all of a sudden, things that my twin flame would describe to me just, like, resonated with me in a way like, what? It has a name? Or we're called something? Or there was so much that happened. And so one of the things that happened is my language of light. He, from the very beginning, he started speaking to me in his language of light, and it was beautiful. It is beautiful. I call him Forest Elf for a reason. When I talk about my twin flame and I don't say twin flame, his code name that I use for all the ones that I talk about is the elf, the Forest Elf. And so it was very elven of him, his language of light, and very beautiful. And I remember hearing it, and it resonated with me. Like, why is this really resonating with me? Like, I understand him. I understand him on a soul level when he's talking, when he's speaking, when this is coming through. And then, and the more I heard it, the more I realized that it made sense to me, because I had been doing that, obviously not calling it language of light, but I had been doing that way before him. I remember doing it in high school with some friends, and they're like, what the heck, you know? People that I was close to. I only did it with people that I felt really like safe to do it in with, but I kind of thought it was just gibberish. But it felt right for me to do it, for me to express myself that way. As a matter of fact, it felt even way more comfortable. I'm bilingual, trilingual in a way, but it felt way more comfortable for me than using any language, any human language, to speak this way and express myself that way. And so when my twin flame came and he busted the door down on my spirituality, that was one thing he exposed me to. And all of a sudden, him and we started speaking in language of light a lot. We were so telepathic that it became common ground for us to think the same thing, or have discussions back and forth, or answer each other telepathic question, you know. And it was common for us. It was just everyday kind of situation that would only grab our attention because someone else in our group would go like, what the hell, what's going on? Or we would throw someone else off, and it was because we were having these conversations and then just like filling in, or just like saying something verbally, and the other people weren't connecting with that, you know. There was a lot of that, a lot of things going on between my twin flame and I in social circles, that we would throw other people off, just like constantly like starting in one conversation and just going around to a whole bunch of different conversations and then coming right back around, tying it all together was another one. So sometimes it was hard to keep up with us, but that's the way we mingled. So anyway, so the language of light was something, was a way that him and I communicated, and even though it was different, his was different than mine, he described mine, and I tend to agree, has a bit of like a it sounds a bit Asian, but it also sounds very Aztec, very Mayan. So it's ancient. It has an ancient tone to it, and I tend to agree with that, especially because I'm very native. And what does that even mean, very native? I'm just very connected with my roots, my native roots. And sadly, there's so much that I don't know, but on a deep spiritual within my core, I'm very connected with my native roots. And so I tend to agree that my language of light reflects that. One of my main guides that is with me all the time is this beautiful Native American woman. I'm just so blessed. But anyway, so him and I used to speak in language of light. And like I said, even though it was different, hence was very elven, and mine was very native, we still understood each other, you know. And that happens with all language of light. You can type in language of light on YouTube and find information on it. And so so that was then, and it was a common thing for us to speak in language of light. But after, you know, our journeys took us in different directions, I used it sparsely because, quite honestly, you know, I was surrounded by a lot of muggles, for one. And two, it's not often that you come across another person that understands what language of light is or has even heard of it. So slowly I started just tapering off to not using my language of light. Used it here and there sparsely, but all of a sudden, as that situation occurred last night, it just came out, and fluid, and no thought behind it. It was just me expressing myself. And so it felt very validating for me to do that as it was happening. And I smiled, right? I tried not to smile with my teeth. I smiled just like closed mouth. And so when I came back around this way to go back to the bedroom, I stopped right in front of that veil that I don't think I could see when I was right in front of it. I could see it from the angle that I was in. But I stopped there because I knew that's where the energy, where I had seen it. I did something kind of cheesy. I curtsied and nodded my head at it. You know? because I felt humbled and I felt honored. There's what I was trying to get earlier. I felt honored that for some reason, possibly because I've been watching a lot of Dr. Stephen Greer's videos that he's brought out recently. If you go to his channel, Dr. Stephen Greer, Greer, and a serious disclosure, Sirius as the star, the planets, not. He recently had like this weekend retreat or something, and so it was recorded and he put those videos up on YouTube. So I've been watching a lot of them. A lot of them are how to make contact with our galactic family, and the process of being in deep conscious meditation, or being in a deep conscious state to be able to do so. You have to be in a deep state of consciousness in your daily life. For example, for me, and it doesn't mean like you're constantly meditating and zoning out. It doesn't. But for me, for example, the way I see the world is quite different, I've been told, than the average person. I was walking the other day, and this is an example of what I mean. And I was listening to music in my headphones, and as I was listening to music, I noticed that the birds that were flying around me were going with the beats, and there was this moment that was so perfect. It was perfection. 2 birds went this way with the beat, and then 2 more this way, and then 2 more flew this way, and then 1 went whew, and everything happened to the beat that I was listening to. And that synchronicity in my life happens a lot. Like, I feel like I'm always in a music video in my life, because so much happens to music. And because I'm constantly listening to music, right? So much happens to just things around me that make sense. Like the day that I was showing you guys the energy outside in my hands, there's a butterfly just flying, and it looked like a monarch butterfly, but it wasn't. It looked just like it, but it was yellow instead of orange and smaller. But it was flying around me, and this morning one was flying around my son. And so I noticed things like that, I noticed like little dewdrops. Like I was playing with one. I have that video up there, and I'm playing with the dewdrop that just transferred from my car to me, and I thought that was really special. I connected with that. So yeah, I see the world in a bit of different, I pick up on those little frequencies, the clouds speak to me and things like that. I'm just not literally speak to me, but I'm just drawn to certain things that when I try to express them to someone, like I call them muggles, non-magic folk, they just look at me like, oh yeah, that's nice, and it's like, it's so disappointing. But I mean, I live in a place, in a state of mind that is tuning in. I'm constantly tuning in, and quite honestly, I think maybe that's a little reason, a reason why I'm kind of weird and a little maybe perhaps antisocial, because I am connected to other senses, other dimensions, and I'm comfortable there, and I've always been there. So I'm constantly, like I said, since I was a child, picking up on energies and seeing things and experiencing things. I've experienced so much. And yeah, so last night was definitely an experience, and I was so grateful, and I was so humbled, and I was honored that whatever it is, I think, like I said, because I was watching the Dr. Stephen Greer's videos, that, I always talk to the universe. I talk to my brother in my galactic federation. I talk to interdimensional beings, and when I do my card readings, I always call upon a huge number of energies to come and be with me, sit with me in that energy, in that space, so I can have an accurate and concise reading. So yeah, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. That's always a good sign when you're talking about something like this. You always whenever you get goosebumps, it is a sign that that energy, you're in that right energy. You're speaking of truth. You're speaking of what is happening around you at that moment. You're connecting with that event, because there's no space and time. You're connecting with that event as though you were there, because you are, and so are they. Which leads me to my other comment about that. And I took a video directly from Dr. Stephen Greer's seminar that I was watching, because he mentions it at one point, and I've always talked to everybody that I know.
Then towards the end of the night, what I always ask people to do is to connect everything that we've seen and the intelligences within them, the people within them, and invite them to come into your dream time. And since there's really no barrier to space and time, right now you can go back in time to this event, connect to those beings, and ask them to come in to dream time with you tonight here. You understand?
So, especially if you're sensitive, and especially if you're drawn to the paranormal, whether it be a movie, whether it be a show, whether it be, ghost hunting or something, I always tell these people in particular that spirits know no space and time. There is no space and time, and that's just an illusion that us humans have concocted, and we agree to it. But there is no space and time. We can move fluidly through the existence of now. And so we can move in the past, or we can move to the future. We can just be in that space because we are constantly in that presence. I know I'm not possibly making sense to some of you, but I know that it resonates to the people that it needs to resonate. And thus, in the other dimensions, that concept of time and space is laughable. It just is. It always is. So when it comes to the spirit world, and particularly things like ghost shows or movies have so much witchcraft, you guys. Movies and music have a lot of sorcery. And particularly if it's a movie about the paranormal or worse, or other things. You need to be aware that there's a lot of magic and a lot of sorcery in that. And so it has a lot of things attached to it that, guess what, will influence you, will surround you, will come into your space if you allow it. So yeah, spirits know no space and time. So if you are watching something and it has people being haunted by something, whether it be a movie or, like I said, a documentary, a show or something, that spirit is attached to that, and it's also present at that moment that you are connecting to it. So if you're connecting to it, guess what? It's going to want to connect to you. So, to your environment. There are a lot of lower vibrational spirits that are constantly looking for a body to experience that human reality. So any possibility that they can to do so, they will attach. And alcohol is one of those hence why they call it spirits. Alcohol is one of those conduits that allows for you to let down your guard. And you know how when you black out you don't remember anything, but people tell you like, oh my god, you were crazy? Yeah, it's because the spirit attached to you and used your body to have a lot of fun. Been there. Oh god. Anyway, so yeah, we just have to be careful and be very mindful of that kind of stuff as well. Shield and ground, and whenever you're gonna watch, I'm not saying don't watch a paranormal movie or something. I like paranormal shows, I like paranormal movies. Don't overdo it, because we are human and they are spiritual beings from other dimensions, okay? They play by different rules than we do. But there are certain rules that we all must follow. If you cross them, then you are the one opening Pandora's box. If they cross them, it's because you open Pandora's box somehow. But they won't cross a certain kind of unspoken rule in the universe, in the galaxy, in the dimensions, whatever you want to call it. There's some unspoken rules that they won't cross if you know what you're doing, you know. So, but you have to approach it with respect, always with respect, and ground and shield whenever you're watching movies or anything that has to do with anything paranormal, anything with magic, anything with sorcery, anything with that's real, that has any kind of energy like that. And if you're not sure, then just ground and shield anyway, to be on the safe side. What I like to do with screens, like TV screens and stuff, is I just create this protective bubble around it so nothing can come through. It's just like cased in there, and that alone is just makes a huge difference. So yeah, this video was to talk about that experience that I had last night, and also to share the whole paranormal part, because I've been wanting to talk to you guys about it. But yeah, I feel so blessed. I felt like I was gonna have some serious dreams, because I'm a dream walker, right? So I figure what better night to have some serious dreams. I literally did that whole curtsy and nodded my head and then went to my bedroom and went to sleep. I didn't even think, there's nothing I can do as a little human to say, okay, yeah, I'm not gonna go to sleep because there's aliens in my, I hate using the word aliens. Sorry, I erased that from my energy field. I apologize for using that word. It's so separate, it's so divisible. I don't like it. Transdimensional beings or ETs or something, but brethren, I really like the galactic family feeling. So but yeah, there was nothing, I wasn't gonna sage my house or anything, and like I said, I felt honored that they connected with me and observed the kind of person that I am. And I am an Earth ambassador. That's what Dr. Stephen Greer is trying to wake people up to be, you know, human ambassadors for our interdimensional galactic beings, to make personal contact with us, you know, and not leave it to big agencies to handle it, because we need to come from a place of love and peace and be genuine, and be open and conscious and ready for that kind of connection. Actually, I have a story. When my son was born, I knew immediately that I needed to take my son to what Dr. Stephen Greer recently described as one of the chakras of the earth, that he feels it's like one of the chakras of the earth, which is Mount Shasta. Mount Shasta is a place that I how do I describe it? It's just one with me in such a way. It's like I'm a child coming home to mother, you know, to my home. I'm one with that mountain, on a spiritual level, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. So before I really knew where Mount Shasta was, I remember it was back in the time where I had just met my twin flame and we had parted ways. At that time, we would come back together that second time, but we had parted ways for a while, and I started seeing a lot of Mount Shasta, like the signs were everywhere for me. Mount Shasta and Mount Shasta and Mount Shasta, like just in random places, like a sign that would say that, or something on TV, or so. I started getting this feeling, two feelings. One, that I really, really, really had to go to Mount Shasta. It was calling me. I'd never been there before. I didn't know where it was. It was calling me. And then another one, that I had to go to Sedona. and it was calling me. And to this day, I have not gone to Sedona, but I didn't understand why. I just knew that I had to go to Mount Shasta and Sedona. And so the reason I bring up my twin flame and that fact that we had parted ways at that moment is because I traveled back from Vancouver Island through the 5 into California, and I never realized that the mountain that I was passing, that I looked at a few times, because I traveled through that area in that time frame. I traveled through that area a few times. But that mountain that I kept looking at and kept thinking how beautiful it is and I want to stop there, I never realized. I never saw the signs for some reason that say City of Mount Shasta, you know? So it was calling me. It was calling me on such a deep level. And so I went to my oracle friend at the time. We were living close vicinity, and I started meditating with her group and stuff. And I had a personal reading with her, and one of the things that popped up for me, because I didn't ask anything, I just said, I'm just here for you to discover me, basically. Tell me what you feel. And so one of the things that she came back with was that, and I'm gonna botch the name because I'm dyslexic, so I say it backwards, Lemurian. She said that I was a Lemurian, and she said that I needed to go to Mount Shasta to connect with, you know, the energy. And I said that was so intense for me because I hadn't yet told her that that mountain was calling me, and I had no reason why. I had no idea why. So that was a huge point of spirituality for me. So when my son was born, I knew that ever since then, you know, I've made pilgrimages to Mount Shasta, and between my twin flame and I, we've had some, and other friends have had some beautiful experiences on the mountain. We've camped on the mountain, and we've seen woodland creatures. We've seen what I feel like was like a dwarf. We've seen just the energy, and then at night we got to see the beautiful orbs that come from the mountain. And so consciously, my twin flame and I and a few friends that were there, consciously we called them to us, and to our astonishment, that orb that we were specifically calling to us, you know, consciously began to move towards us. And as it did that, we all kind of freaked out a bit, you know, because we were kind of newbies and that kind of thing. And it stopped coming towards us, and it just kind of kept doing what it was doing. But it was such a beautiful experience, and I actually have the videos on my YouTube, none of the orbs because I don't have the high-tech cameras, but the videos of that night, that day when we arrive at the campsites. And actually one of the videos, I'm recording a video as I see something run from one tree to another, and I mention it on camera. And then the other one is the next day we went to a log cabin to keep the festivities going for that summer, and we talk about acknowledging that we saw aliens, you know, at the time that's what we were calling them, on the mountain. So those beautiful orbs of light, you know, we saw them that day, and I think we saw two. When I decided to take my son to Mount Shasta, I knew the sooner the better. Fast forward to the future now, I had my son. The sooner the better. All I knew was that I needed to take him. So when he was 6 weeks old, I put him in the car seat, and we headed to the mountain. I went with my sister and her partner, and we went and we stayed at this new cabin that I've never been to before, and it's called The View because it has such a spectacular view of the mountain. And so I told my sister all about the orbs and stuff, and she was very excited. She was very open. Her partner was not, and it makes sense. My sister is a witchy, magical creature like me, and her partner is not. He's just not in the place or space for it. So yeah, I took my son to the mountain itself and took him up to 7,000 plus feet, and got him out and took him to the mountain. And at a specific part of the mountain, I carried my son and I introduced my son to the mountain and the mountain to my son. And it was such a beautiful moment. It felt like my family. I was introducing my child to my family. This spiritual mountain is my family, and so it was such a moment for me, and I felt so blessed. I felt like at that moment the mountain blessed my son and I. And that night I went to sleep. There was this beautiful room for my son and I to sleep in, but at the time I wasn't prepared. I didn't have anywhere to put my son, and the bed was made for a couple, so it had two sides to get off the giant bed. And I didn't want my 6-week-old to all of a sudden fall off the bed, right? So we ended up sleeping in the living room with the giant window that had no curtains. This particular area is very dark. It's very dark at night, and it has the river, the Sacramento River, on the one side. And it's very woodsy and it's very dark at night. And so at one point I woke up and I realized my son needed a diaper change. So I was changing him, and it was like 1-ish in the morning. And that was around the same time that when we were camping years late before, when we saw the first orb. So I'm changing him and everything, and I decide, okay, he's still asleep. I'm gonna sit on this chair and look directly at the mountain, because it had the beautiful view. And as I'm sitting there, I'm not tired anymore. I'm just kind of awake at like 1:15 in the morning. I see an orb coming out of the mountain. Beautiful orb of light. And from from where I was, distance-wise, I was a good to get from that city to, because it's in Dunsmuir, this cabin. I think it's like 5-6 miles just to get to Mount Shasta from Dunsmuir, plus another 5 miles to get from the freeway to the base of the mountain, plus another however miles to get to the top. So at least, let's just say at least 10 miles away, 15 miles away from the mountain itself. It's quite a distance, but you could see them from where I was, and they were huge because you could really see them. I have a really blurry video because I took video from my regular camera. You can zoom in and you can see them. They're just like this little fuzzy points of light. I say them because after that one, and I went and woke up my sister. She wanted to make sure that I woke her up if anything happened. The one point at light was traveling across the mountain at an exponential rate that no item in reality could ever, in this dimension, could do. Going across from one side of the mountain to the other, I mean, that's thousands and thousands of feet, up and down, sideways, diagonal, forward, backwards. I mean, and you could see them, they were coming out of the mountain. So that one turned into 2 more, and then 2 more, 5. We saw 5 that night traveling the mountain, and just in such a splendor.
This is June something, 2018, from Dunsmuir, California, filming directly at Mount Shasta. We have a view from our cabin that is amazing. Oh, light right there. And we've been seeing the orbs. I've seen up to 3. My sister's seen several. I've seen the orbs just traveling up the top half of Mount Shasta, the peak with the snow. And we took pictures earlier for point of reference, and the stars are not as bright as the orbs. Yeah, definitely not satellites, definitely not planes. We got to see something that we thought at first was a plane, but then it started flying erratically, and it actually flew right into the peak of Mount Shasta.
Into the mountains.
We see it. Look, there's another one. It just came out on the right side. Look, 2 of them just came out on the right side. Did you see them?
No, I didn't.
Look, those are not stars. That just came out of the side of Shasta, straight ahead. They're not on the mountain. Oh, well, I guess they are on the mountain. They are on the mountain. My bad. Look, those 2.
I see 2 in the mountain.
Yeah, they're in the mountain. My bad. I thought they were like, I was looking at Chestina for a second.
Oh.
Freaked out. Oh, I'm supposed to be recording. I haven't done this in a while.
And in a way, it traveled. I intuitively felt like it was a private show for us, because they all 5 of them stayed within the vicinity of where we could see them the whole night. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. By 5 o'clock, they were still going. It was getting daylight, and they were still going. I actually went to sleep. My sister and I went to sleep before the show stopped, before they stopped roaming the mountains and the trees and stuff in that area. And I've honestly intuitively felt like it was meant for us. It was like a celebration. It was like an acknowledgement that I had taken my son up the mountain to experience, to be blessed by the mountain. I felt so blessed. I felt like it blessed my child, and it acknowledged, that I had been there with my child. So that was a beautiful, beautiful experience. And so yeah, I mean, I have this connection to these realms, and I'm so grateful to that. I'm so humbled by that. But yeah, my life has a constant, a magical energy flow to it, and on the surface I'm kind of weird and a bit antisocial and awkward, but it's because I kind of resonate in a different environment, in a different dimension a little bit. I got my foot dipped into another dimension. So yeah, yesterday's experience, or last night's experience, it happened after me and my soul energy were connecting, and we had such beautiful and amazing and clearing and pure energy share between the 2 of us. And it grew. It was really powerful. It was a really powerful experience, and it was just so much full of so much energy, and it was just beautiful. And it happened a few hours after that. So I think that might have had something to do with it as well. There was an abundance of energy left within me. So yeah, just and people wonder why I only date soul energies. Like, I'd rather just be single and not deal with a muggle. I wait for that soul energy, which they're rare. They really are. Someone that you connect with on that core soul spiritual level, because that's just beautiful, and that energy is intoxicating, and there's so much magic that comes to you in a relationship like that. So yeah, I am #blessed. But I really am blessed. I really am. And I wanted to share this experience with people that I know that are out there that resonate with it, and to have this experience for me to look back at and see, because it was definitely one of those that it's like, what? Wow. I know people in my life, some people in my life will go, you're crazy, like, weren't you scared? No. It's not something to fear when you are, when you're connecting, when you are in that energy yourself. You are a part of it. They are a part of you. They're all around us constantly. That's why it's interdimensional, because we're interdimensionally commingling. So may this video reach whomever it needs to reach and touch your soul and further propel you on your journey, and know that the experiences that you are experiencing are real, are very real. So don't doubt yourself, because you are a magic being as well, and there is so much out there if you are willing to open yourself up and come from a place of love and light and consciousness and peace to connect with. So, namaste, beautiful, beautiful people.